The Queen Consort didn't wait for permission. No press, no ceremony. Just got on a plane before dawn to go to America. But she didn't expect to encounter a royal guard in the control tower. This guard had read the manifest, seen what was hidden in her luggage, and knew exactly what was at stake. 30 minutes into the flight, while the plane was already crossing the channel, his voice came through the cockpit. Return to Windsor right away. And for the first time in the history of royal aviation, a guard stopped a Queen's flight mid-air and told it to turn around. Before we show you what was in those diplomatic cases, make sure you're subscribed with the bell turned on. Also leave a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. What you're about to watch isn't just about halting an aircraft, it's about a guard who stood between power and history. At 5:40 a.m., Heathrow looked like every other airport before sunrise. Quiet asphalt, amber lights on the runway cutting through the fog, the kind of cold that gets into your shoulders and remains there. Hours before, rain had come and gone, leaving the concrete wet and shiny. Sergeant Rowan Ansley stood with his hands behind his back on the observation deck. Water was still flowing from the right side of his cap brim. The Coldstream Guards had him for 17 years, 2 tours in Helmand. Since late 2022, he has been the royal liaison to aviation security. When the Gulfstream's first engine roared to life, he didn't blink. 3 black Range Rovers were parked near the auxiliary ramp, and their headlights were out. No press vans. There will be no departure ceremony. The manifest said that this was a humanitarian group going to Washington, led by Queen Camilla herself. 7 helpers, 2 secretaries, 3 sealed trunks with the words diplomatic support material on them. The reason? Goodwill across the Atlantic linked to literacy groups that the king personally endorsed. The king was remained at Sandringham, though. There had been no public brief. There is no record of a royal household order in the aviation records. Rowan had looked over all of the week's outgoing clearances. Camilla's trip had come up at the last minute and been approved by a diplomatic bureau he didn't know about. He accessed the digital manifest again on his tablet. Archival diplomatic cases not subject to inspection is what it says on page 4, section C. Trunks that don't go through screening at all. The heritage privacy law hasn't been used in over 10 years, and it definitely hasn't been used since Raymil. He moved down to the signature for permission. At 11:47 p.m. the override had gone through, the night prior when most supervision officers would have been off duty. The authorizing officer was described as DCS Provisional, which is a temporary diplomatic clearance desk that only opens up when there are emergency royal movements. Rowan opened the historic clearance archive on a second screen. 3 identical exemptions have been given in the last 18 months, all from the same interim desk. 2 were for Camilla's excursions to France, and 1 was for a private trip to Scotland. None of them had been highlighted at the time since they had all come back to Britain within 72 hours. But this flight was supposed to last 10 days. And if those trunks made it to America with diplomatic protection, the Crown's legal powers stopped at the Atlantic. He used the custodial alert system, which was set up by Princess Anne after Raymil, to let people know when any heritage items were moved. The system should have gone off as soon as those trunks were logged. It hadn't. Someone had turned off the warning by hand. Rowan's jaw got tight. Not only was this not allowed, it was planned. The last Range Rover door opened below. Camilla came outside in a heavy gray coat and a big scarf. Her sunglasses were too dark for the time of day. 1 helper had an umbrella. Another person rolled her overnight bag. She didn't stop, she just climbed the stairs to the plane without looking at the tarmac. Rowan watched her move without turning his head. His instincts kicked in. Not terror, but a chilly indication that something was wrong. He had been stationed at Windsor long enough to know when he should ask inquiries instead than salute. The last piece of luggage went into the jet's belly. The cargo door is locked. Engines started their last spin. The ground crew left. Rowan stayed still. Not until he knew exactly what was intended to leave British soil without the Crown's permission. As he walked into the restricted communications corridor, the sound of his boots bounced off the floor of the operations wing. There was a faint smell of jet fuel and ozone in the air. He informed the operator, "Duty office, Windsor Command, secure line." His voice had a subtle authority. She let him in without asking any questions. A click. Then Windsor Duty office, Sergeant Harper speaking. "And Inslee here. Outbound manifest GS-442, the Queen Consort's charter to Washington. I need proof that the royals gave their permission." The hush lasted long enough for him to know the answer before Harper replied, "Sir, that flight isn't listed on the household clearance ledger. The sole active travel permit is for freight from Sandringham to Balmoral." Rowan's jaw got tight. "Check the custodial index again." "I already did." Nothing under the consort's name. There was another pause. Sergeant, Protocol 9 is still in effect. No royal artifact or archive freight can leave British land without being signed by both the custodian's office and the collection trust. The turbines on the Gulfstream spun faster through the glass wall, and steam rose from the engines. Got it. Hold the line. He changed radios and asked Heathrow Command for a delay on the runway. Report an irregularity in the fuel pressure on aircraft GS442. Regular technical checks. Need a 15-minute hold. The controller took a moment to think. That's a diplomatic charter, Sergeant. Got it. Mark it as a safety measure. Don't push back until the inspection is clear. The request was granted under security irregularity. It took 12 minutes, maybe less. Ground crew paused in the middle of a signal below. The stairs stayed out, and staffer at the base of the plane looked up, annoyed, with the phone clamped to his ear. Camilla's personal assistant leaned over to her on the jet. Ma'am, operations says there is a delay. Check the systems. Camilla's answer was calm and short. Tell them to clear it. It's time for us to go. Rowan saw her attaché pass the command to the cockpit. The pilots thought about it for a moment, but not for long. He went down the encrypted contact list until he got to the line that only a few guards had ever used. Prince William is the acting custodian. He pushed the button to connect. The voice on the other end of the call was low and controlled. This is Windsor. Rowan took a deep breath. Sir, it's Sergeant Annesley. We have an outbound plane with unverified heritage goods and no household clearance. The Queen Consort is on board. Not bewilderment, just a halt. Math, stay in your place. Don't get in the way physically. But that plane doesn't leave British airspace. Got it. Got it, sir. He hung up the phone and looked out the window, where the Gulfstream's navigation lights pulsed against the dark horizon. The engines went up to full power. The only way to stop what was going to happen was to use a law that was made for treason, not tourism. William didn't say anything right away. When he finally spoke, it was in a voice that sounded like someone who had been getting ready for this moment for a long time. What are you seeing, Sergeant? Rowan stood at the edge of the operations balcony and looked out over the hangar, which was slick with rain, while the Gulfstream sat on the distant taxiway. 3 sealed archival trunks with the words diplomatic cargo exempt from inspection on them. No dual countersignatures, no verification from the collection trust, no permission from Royal Operations, going to Washington, D.C. for humanitarian reasons. Luggage logged for 10 days of diplomatic attendance, another break, and where do you stand? Outside Hangar 6, delayed takeoff because of a mechanical problem. Gave us 12 minutes, we're down to 5. Static flickered. William's voice came back, this time colder. She knew what she was doing. Rowan didn't say anything. Keep an eye on it. Don't get in the way of her moving. You can use Ordnance 7 if the plane leaves British airspace. Rowan's stomach turned. There hadn't been any changes to that protocol in 20 years, since the Diana Commission wrote emergency overrides for air-based custodial transfers. These were meant for the worst-case circumstances of defection, sabotage, or foreign agents stealing crown property, not for a queen consort. Sir, just to be sure, you heard me? William's voice was like steel. Now, you set off the ordnance if she crosses the coast without the right permission. And Rowan, yeah, sir. You don't stop once it's active. Not until that plane is back under the Crown's control. Rowan straightened up without thinking about it, gripping the edge of the communications desk tightly. Got it. Good. Then, in a lower voice, thank you. The call went dead. The stairway has already been taken down below. Crew gave the all clear. The engines sped up. The floor of the hangar shook. Rowan grabbed his encrypted tablet, accessed the Crown Link clearance relay, and typed, no Coldstream guard had used since the 1990s. Moving an asset. Verification pending. Ordnance 7 is in effect. Then he hit send, and watched as an unapproved and unverified royal plane sped toward a sky it no longer had permission to enter. At 0618 Zulu, the wheels left the tarmac. The Queen Consort's plane cut through the morning sky. Its sleek white hull was lit up by the runway lights, and the faint blush of the sun rising over the horizon, all while it was inside Heathrow's encrypted radar grid. GS442 set off a chain reaction. Rowan's use of Ordnance 7. There was a yellow bar next to its code on the CrownNet overlay. Civilian controllers couldn't see it, but military and custodial airspace coordinators could. Moving asset. Heritage categorization not confirmed. Containment is a good idea. Rowan walked into the aircraft command vestibule and held up his wristband to the secure ID lock. 2 people in charge of the airplane looked up. Attention, I need a helicopter to Northolt. Lift right away. EEGS-3 is the clearance code. The supervisor's hand was hovering over the desk, military eavesdropping of communications. I won't say it again. Orders went out across the headset network. A Royal Security helicopter was ready in minutes, and the sound of the turbine whine filled the hangar. Rowan belted on and put on his headset. He peered down at the ground log tablet. The screen showed Camilla's departure record without sound. Departure: Heathrow at 0618 Zulu. The destination is Dulles International. Status: Charter of Diplomacy. Cargo notation 3X archival. Cases involving diplomacy are not included. Override. Staff at consort not verified. Rowan looked up the Legacy Wing inventory on his tablet and compared the trunk types he had seen in the manifest. LW3D series, Category D artifacts, which are the highest level of custodial items below the crown jewels. He looked through the vault registry. There are currently 12 pieces in that category. Personal letters from Cold War summits, ceremonial presents from Commonwealth countries that had diplomatic value, artifacts whose removal could cause international problems if they were found to be missing. And then he saw it. Gambia pendant, item LW3D23A. Last inspection was 14 months ago. Status of Vault 2F, safe. He couldn't breathe. He had been there for that checkup. Princess Anne opened the case herself, looked at the sapphire brooch, and read aloud from Queen Elizabeth's handwritten note that was attached to the registry. This remains with the institution, not with any individual, regardless of rank. Rowan didn't understand why she had put so much emphasis on those remarks at the time. He did now. Anne had known. She might not have known the details, but she knew someone was pushing the limits. He plugged into the communication link to sync up with flight coordination. The Northolt intercept asset is already in the air, following GS-442 over the channel and staying at a safe distance. Tell them to keep their unarmed shadow pattern. Only the Crown has jurisdiction. Copy that, Sergeant. The helicopter turned east and flew low over London's skeletal skyline, following the course that Camilla's aircraft had taken just a few minutes before. He wasn't trying to catch a flight. He was stopping a principle. When GS-442 reached cruising altitude at 12,000 feet above the English Channel, the engines were humming smoothly as the jet flew east. There wasn't enough noise in the cockpit. Captain Hughes, an experienced RAF pilot who became a Royal Carrier, looked at the radar overlay with a frown. His co-pilot said, "We've got a tail." Hughes got closer. A second airplane signature had arrived off their 6. Keeping the visual range, the altitude matched without asking for clearance, so it wasn't hostile. Think about it. Identification. The C-19 Military Shadows call sign matches the Northolt intercept pattern. Hughes tapped his phone. Control, confirm the Shadow aircraft designation behind GS-442. When it came, the answer wasn't right away. It didn't come from air traffic control for civilians. It arrived across the encrypted CrownNet band, and one frigid sentence broke through. "This is Sergeant Rowan Inslee, following Crown Ordnance 7. You must go back to Windsor Airfield right away to confirm." The words hung in the cockpit like frost. Oliver Grant, Camilla's attaché, pushed into the aisle of the cabin with his phone already clamped to his ear. He walked toward the cockpit bulkhead, his voice low and tense. "We've just been flagged. Some silly rules. Tell them to stop it." Camilla didn't look up from her chair. "What kind of nonsense?" Grant let out a sharp breath. "Ordnance 7 is what they're talking about." Her head moved slowly. They wouldn't dare. Hughes opened the override band, confirming receipt. "Ordnance 7 is usually used for airborne threat protocol. You are bringing it up because of custodial clearance." Rowan's voice came through again, steady but calm. "That's right. There are unverified archival materials in the outbound cargo. Royal Heritage clearance did not allow for departure. You are carrying property that is flagged by the state without anyone watching. Go back to Windsor Airfield right away." The co-pilot leaned back behind Hughes. "He's not lying. This code is real. Crown power, which is in effect because of emergency heritage lockdown laws. If we don't pay attention to it, we'll lose immunity as soon as we enter international airspace." Hughes gently turned his head. "He just locked our plane in the sky." Grant came back, and his voice was getting more and more brittle. "We're already in the air. Keep on as planned. We'll clean it up on the ground." But Hughes had already made up his mind. No, we won't. Not with that flag for the ordnance. That flight plan is now radioactive." Outside, the shadow planes changed their height to follow their path, like a hawk watching over them. Camilla sat inside and glanced out the window without saying a word. Not only was she being followed, a guard was pulling her home, but he wasn't after her title. he was after the reality behind it. As the jet leveled out, the cabin lights darkened, and the pressure hid the tension in the aisle. Camilla's seatbelt was still fastened, and her scarf was still neatly wrapped around her neck, but her fingers drummed quietly against the armrest, slow, controlled, and very sharp. Captain Hughes walked into the aisle with his helmet under one arm. "Ma'am, I need to let you know that we got a direct Crown Net transmission. According to Ordinance 7, the flight must go back to Windsor." Camilla stayed still. "By whose authority?" "Prince William. Confirmed by protocol code and security trace. The order is in effect and must be followed." Grant leaned in. "This is not okay. You're not a guard dog, you're the flight commander. Go on to Washington. We'll take care of the fallout." Hughes didn't flinch. "Sir, with all due respect, if we fly into international airspace in violation of Ordinance 7, we lose our diplomatic protection. The Crown is now the one who is hurt. I won't risk a constitutional crisis in the air." Camilla's voice was sharp like a knife. "I want to talk to the person who started it." A few keystrokes later, the satellite channel was locked. The emergency line in the cockpit connected to the screen in the front cabin. Before Rowan and Inslee's face revealed, there was static. His helmet was off, and his headset was on, and you could see his rain-soaked uniform behind him in the helicopter bay. "Your Majesty," he said first. She didn't say anything. She just stared at him. Her posture was still regal, even though the threat of humiliation was getting closer. "Do you know how serious what you're doing is?" She didn't sound angry. It was disappointed, like a king talking to a child who had gone too far. "Totally, Mom," Rowan said. "That's why I'm doing it. You've used a protocol meant for traitors and foreign saboteurs on a queen consort. I didn't turn it on because of the title. I turned it on because of how it acted." Her jaw got stiff. She cautioned, "This will cost you your job." Rowan moved closer to the screen. "I didn't pick this job to make a living. I took it to protect the Crown, not the individuals who wear it." The military C-90 jet stayed at the same height as Camilla's behind him. It wasn't a threat. It didn't have to be. It was just there to warn the air that not every uniform obeyed the rules. Her attendants didn't say anything inside Camilla's cabin. The silence got louder as we went up. That calm, determined voice had just warned them. "You are not above the air you fly through." The Air Command Center in Windsor wasn't that loud. It was exact and controlled. Under dim halogen light, every surface shone. Airspace data was streaming into each console, making a soft hum. Without saying anything, Prince William walked through the door. He wasn't wearing a military uniform. He was just wearing a dark field coat over an ironed shirt with the collar unbuttoned. Everyone in the room stood up. "What's up?" he asked. The lead controller answered without looking. "GS-442 is on course at 12,000 feet, going east and getting close to the transatlantic corridor. Ordinance 7 is in effect. The intercept aircraft is in a tandem posture. No changes yet. Communications confirmed the hold. No official refusal. Waiting for instructions." William nodded once and then spoke to the radio operator at the Crown Net relay. "Put me through to the cockpit. Permission. Custodian override personal command." The operator didn't think twice. A few moments later, the open line beeped. "Captain Hughes is getting it. This is the Prince of Wales. You are carrying archive cargo that is not allowed under legacy custodial rules. You must now return to Crown airspace and land at Windsor Airfield right away. Be quiet. The only sound is the quiet hiss of air under pressure." "Got it, sir. Changing course now," Hughes said. Hughes halted the transmission in the cockpit and turned to the front cabin, where Camilla sat silently next to her aide. He didn't seek for permission. He just said, "Windsor has been given formal instructions. We're going back." Camilla didn't say anything. She looked out the window and saw her reflection in the light of the horizon. She had lost the air, not because of force, but because of something worse, structure. The plane gently turned to the west. The waters of the channel below them sparkled as the sun rose. The intercept jet did the same thing, moving smoothly into a parallel descent without any noise or ceremony. Rowan, still in the military chopper, watched the coordinated maneuver on his radar tablet. He noticed the curve of Camilla's jet, which was elegant, unwilling, and certain. His co-pilot looked at the screen. "They're coming home." Rowan let out a breath. The Crown always goes home. William stepped away from the console when he got back to Windsor. There was no victory, no smile, just a small gesture to the operator. "Record the communication. Custodial return started by airspace override," he told them. And with that, the Prince of Wales left the command center without cameras or cheers. Because the people who protect legacy don't yell when it's safe. They just put it back where it belongs. Windsor Airfield was almost silent. There were no sirens or flashing lights, just the steady hum of the windsocks turning, and the faint metallic tick of cooling equipment around the edge of the road. The early sun shone through the low clouds, casting long shadows on the concrete. There were 2 unmarked matte gray security trucks waiting at the far end of the field. No royal symbols. No one in the press had been told. There were no planned arrivals. There is only one flight, GS442. Sergeant Rowan Enninsley was now on the last approach, standing near the bottom of the service stairs with 2 Heritage Protocol officers in ceremonial black on either side of him. His hands were behind his back, and his clothing was sharp, even though the humidity was rising from the runway in the morning. He didn't say anything. He didn't move his weight. He only stared as the jet's wheels touched down with a quiet screech. The nose dipped a little before the plane rolled smoothly toward the hangar area. The jet taxied in slowly and quietly, as if it didn't want to announce its own return. It stopped. Engines stopped. The vehicle for the stairs rolled up. The doors swung open. Camilla stepped out first. She was wearing the same gray coat she had on when she left, but the sleeves were wrinkled and the scarf around her neck was a little off. No crown, no brooch, and no security detail that could be seen. She went down without touching the rail, with her back straight and her gaze straight ahead. Rowan did not salute. She didn't say anything either. Oliver Grant followed her, phone still in hand and jaw hard. There were still 2 aides in the cabin. They didn't leave. Camilla got to the tarmac. She looked at Rowan for a second but didn't say anything. A dark car drove up next to them. Prince William got out by himself. No help, no driver. The only sound was the calm rhythm of leather soles on the tarmac. They stopped a few steps apart. Neither said hello. William was the first to speak. This was not a mistake. Camilla's face hardly moved. She said, "It was a diplomatic trip." "No," he said. "It was an unlawful departure with goods that wasn't verified as archive, while a custodial hold is in place." She looked over to the jet. "You're making me look bad in front of your soldiers." He didn't yell. "They're not my soldiers. They belong to the crown." A long break. "And the plane you tried to leave on was too." Camilla's eyes lit up for a moment. Then she turned and walked into the terminal without saying a word. Grant followed and spoke quickly into his phone. Rowan stayed still. The engine of the grounded jet let out one last sigh of pressure, and the metal shrank with a hiss. The sky had let her go, but the ground had taken her back. The cabin lights stayed on inside the grounded plane. Not a single person spoke. The archive trunks were still fastened down in the cargo area. 3 similar cases, all matte black with brass-reinforced corners and crown seal impressions near the handles. They appeared normal, but they weren't. Sergeant Rowan Enninsley walked through the back hatch and dived behind the fuselage bulkhead. 2 Heritage officers with digital catalog tablets and secure evidence wraps were on either side of him. He stopped at the first trunk and squinted at the small writing that was carved into the latch. Legacy Wing Classification for LW3D Tune 23A. Category D, things that needed to be kept by 2 people. Things that never left the archive. He opened the case cautiously. Inside were 2 sealed velvet files and a polished wooden jewel box, both of which were protected by foam. No tags, no documents for export. Rowan recognized the cover of the upper folder right away. It was a diplomatic communication archive from 1987 that the Queen had previously mentioned during an official audit in Windsor. It had been marked as permanently stored, with access only for the current king or queen. The box of jewels was worse. He carefully opened it up to show a flat sapphire brooch surrounded by white diamonds. This was the Gambia pendant, which New Zealand officials sent to Queen Elizabeth almost 40 years ago. The last place it was seen was in Vault 2F in the Legacy Wing. It wasn't lost. No one had ever reported it missing since no one thought to look for it in the hold of a private plane going out. One of the people in charge of Heritage let out a breath. "That's a level 4 breach." Rowan nodded sadly and opened his locked log tablet. Every action, every site, and every serial number was written down, photographed, and sealed. There is no room for interpretation. Case 2 had 3 handwritten letters. Letters between the Queen and a foreign head of state during a summit in the Cold War. The third trunk had a list of things that hadn't been recorded, like heirloom sketches, personal notes, and a package with a wax seal with Elizabeth's initials on it. Rowan's hands stopped moving as he detected something under the foam lining in Case 3, a recent printout that has been folded, not archived. He picked it up cautiously. It was a vault access log from 8 months ago that showed a diplomatic liaison officer going to Section 3D multiple times, 16 visits over 6 weeks, all noted during the nighttime when there were few staff members around to watch over things. There was a routine inspection label on each entry, but none of them had the right collection trust authority. Under that, there is a handwritten note on Clarence House stationery, saying that goods are marked for possible private transfer under new household custody rules that are still being looked at by the courts. There was no review by the law. There was no such thing as that protocol. Someone had been planning this for months, seeing who could go in and out and writing down what could be moved without being seen. When Ray Mill found out about the initial effort, they just waited for people to stop paying attention. One of the heritage officers read the note over Rowan's shoulder. "Sir, that's proof of systematic removal. Not a mistake, a plan." Rowan took pictures of every page and then put the papers in a different envelope with a red custodial flag on it. This was the label for papers that might be used in a Crown prosecution. With gloves on and evidence wrap sealed, the police moved quickly. The emergency custodial repatriation protocol had registered every item by the time the jet's cabin was closed again. Rowan stood at the top of the stairs to the plane and waved to the van that was waiting. The cases would be taken directly to Windsor's archival security annex by the military. William stood by the back door of the van. He didn't have to inquire what they had found. Rowan talked anyhow. Nothing said. No chain of custody. Not one item allowed. William's jaw moved once. Give everything to the Royal Collection Trust. Hold right now. Not allowed to access till review. And what about travel? Put on hold. Effective right away. The door closed with a loud echoing bang. It was a quiet day in Windsor, when they sealed the heritage they had almost lost back into the institution it was meant to serve. The runway was quiet again. The jet sat still, with its engines cold and a long shadow across the concrete of the airfield. The security van with the seized cases was already halfway down the outer road, with 2 Crown Service escorts on either side of it on its way to Windsor's archival annex. Sergeant Rowan Enninsley stayed behind, his helmet tucked under one arm and his boots wet from the morning mist. He stood just outside the operations hangar and watched the clouds move in the weak light above. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to find Prince William walking up to him by himself. No help, no driver. The only sound was the calm rhythm of leather soles on the tarmac. They halted a few steps apart. Neither said hello. William was the first to speak. "You did your duty quietly, exactly, and without any fuss." Rowan stayed still. "Sir, I followed the law. That's it." William's eyes were level. "You'll never get credit for this. No news outlets will cover it. Your name will not be in any history book." Rowan gave a tiny nod. "I never wanted to be recognized. Just going on." For a moment the prince peered past him at the sealed jet and the vehicles that were far away and disappearing beyond the hangar bend. Then his voice got quieter but stronger. "Then you did exactly what my grandma told us to do." Rowan's jaw got tighter. It wasn't a kind thing to say. It was a charge that went up. William stretched out and put one gloved hand on Rowan's shoulder for half a second before pulling it back. "Take a break, Sergeant." With that, he turned around and walked back to the motor pool. He got into the waiting car without saying further thing. Rowan stayed where he was, the mist clinging to the fringes of his clothing. As the last of the engines became silent, the weight of responsibility slowly lifted off his shoulders. No signs, no clapping, just a legacy protected in the only way it ever really had been, silently, by people who only spoke when they had to. Finally, Rowan turned and walked across the tarmac, going past the grounded jet which was now powerless. The cargo hold is empty. Nothing more than one voice that wouldn't be quiet took away its claim to privilege. Some fights weren't very loud. Some winds didn't ring out. But this one would stay because the jet that left didn't have any history. The one that came back put it back where it belonged. Should a royal guard be able to call back a royal plane while it is in the air? Was it a good idea for Prince William to ground his stepmother's jet? Leave your opinions in the comments below. We read every one of them. Hit the like button if you think duty should come before privilege. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what happens behind the Crown's closed doors. And tell someone who thinks protocol is simply paperwork to read this. It could preserve a legacy. Look at the next video on your screen. We'll see you tomorrow with another unforgettable Royal Guard moment.